Munachi de Gok confided her life story to her best friend, Chiagozi Arins, who functions as the narrator. Munachi stated, if she could alter her name, she would designate it as Janai, meaning mourner. That epitomized her existence throughout her life. She stated that every individual has a personal narrative to share, should they so wish. Some accounts are intriguing to listen to and contemplate joyfully. They alleviate concerns and instill hope. Certain narratives possess the potential to evoke profound emotional responses. Unacknowledged injuries and unspoken truths, the suffering endured, the statements heard, and breaches of parental trust may destabilize relationships or lead to enduring turmoil between affection and revulsion, potentially annihilating familial bonds. The victims prefer to remain silent out of concern that their narratives might be dismissed, thereby empowering the villains to exert greater dominance. Additionally, the trauma they experience can often be difficult to fully articulate or cope with at times. The arduous experiences from their spring may persist into their autumn years if the issues remain unresolved. At times, no amount of intensive therapy can eliminate the psychological distress. Despite all efforts, the victim might remain in a state of misery and immobility, or even become unsettled, due to feeling trapped within their memories. The children of the victims endure the greatest suffering. The adage, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me," is a clear misconception. Words can be as impactful, if not more damaging, than physical pain, because physical discomfort is often forgotten with time. However, words can have a lasting, detrimental effect on the mind. Occasionally, the pain intensifies to a level where only the Lord God possesses the capacity to heal the injury and effect restoration. The latter was exemplified by Munachi, the fourth child of her parents, Anne and Caleb. Munachi was profoundly devastated internally. She was always expressive. To maintain a strong facade, she endeavored to organize the chaos she was subjected to, but with no success. Her parents had 4 children, all of whom were girls. Ades, the first, was stillborn. Then Chiamanda, whom they nicknamed Amanda, was the second. Shenna, the third, died when she was 2 years old, and then Munachi, the 4th child. She loved Amanda. Amanda was 7 years older than Munachi. She was a toddler when her parents separated, and their mother left the girls and moved out of the town. Amanda and Munachi were raised by their father and grandmother. Munachi was unfamiliar with her mother and lacked any emotional attachment. She received her grandmother's affection, numerous hugs and kisses from her sister and father, thus she never experienced longing for her mother, as she was never acquainted with the sensation of her mother's embraces or the sound of her voice. Her mother visited the family when Munachi was 7 years old. She was a stranger to her. When her father introduced the woman, Munachi awkwardly embraced her mother and struggled to connect. The love and emotional bond between mother and daughter were absent. She embraced her and proceeded to her father. However, after several days, Munachi tenderly touched her mother's face, expressing admiration and hope that her mother would continue to visit them, as she appreciated the growing intimacy. Regrettably, her wish was not fulfilled. Nonetheless, she found solace in her grandmother, sister, and father. Although he may have been imperfect in others' eyes, he was her perfect world. Munachi was 9 years old, and Amanda was 16 when their grandmother passed away. 1 year subsequent to her demise, their father remarried a woman who had a child. The mother and daughter relocated to the family residence. Initially, Munachi believed that the marriage was for the best, given that Amanda was away to school. Therefore, Munachi assumed she would have someone to engage with. Conversely, the child exhibited unfriendly and hypersensitive behavior, which Munachi accepted as such. Several days following the wedding, a significant paradigm shift occurred. Munachi's safety and security were no longer assured. Her father held his wife's child in higher regard than his own biological offspring. Munachi longed for the same bond with her father as his wife's child, but unfortunately, it was not to be. She endured an intolerable existence and harbored an unequivocal sense of exclusion, unloved, disregarded, rejected, and lost. She was no longer regarded as valid, was absent from his life and family, and was rendered speechless. Amanda was older and more mature, however, she was away at school. She was unaware of or did not perceive the impact and negativity of their father's marriage, whereas Munachi was cognizant of it. The disparity was significant between Munachi's father's love for her and his stepdaughter, who called him dad. Munachi lost weight, but her daughter was healthy, not to mention overweight, because she was happy. Munachi's father did not acknowledge her considerable weight loss. It is conceivable that he either overlooked his biological child or lacked concern. The happiness and well-being of his new family took precedence. One day, he struck her on behalf of his wife, because she did not speak to her. That was the precursor of what was to come. She pondered her mother's whereabouts, her activities, and whether she ever reflected upon her and her sister. She questioned why her mother entrusted her daughters to a man who was now married and whose spouse was maltreating her child. Munachi was left alone in the house with a manipulative and ruthless woman who appeared gentle but was, in reality, predatory. No one saw Munachi's tears except God, as she confided her suffering to him. Amanda, a quintessential figure of a caring mother in Munachi's life, fell ill and passed away before reaching the age of 21, leaving Munachi stranded beneath a pile of debris in a vast jungle. She endured mistreatment and experienced dehumanization, leading to a gradual emotional hardening each day. She began displaying undesirable behavior in an attempt to attract her father's attention. However, she was subsequently subjected to corporal punishment. She frequently reflected on the fundamental issues she faced throughout her life, including her mother and father, the essence of who she was, and the quiddity of what she might become. Munachi felt bitterness and resentment, blaming everyone for her struggles. Her mother, the main cause, left when she was about 2, and she was happy with her new family. She could have come for her children when their grandmother died, but she chose not to because her life was perfect without previous children. Her father mistreated Munachi because his spouse and child consistently reported unfounded allegations against her. His belt scarred her arms and belly, fueling her anger. She wondered what she did to deserve his abuse and why her mother ignored her. Munachi's father sent her to spend a summer vacation with her mother. Munachi went. When she got there, she was welcomed into their home. She thought that perhaps her mother would ask her to stay with her and her mother's husband or partner, Munachi, didn't know if or when they were married. She wasn't invited to the ceremony. On that note, she wasn't invited to her father's wedding either. One day, her mother's husband, partner looked at her, smiled, touched her underdeveloped bosoms, and said, "Look at those cherries." Her mother stood there when he touched her, but she said nothing to that offensive gesture. Instead, she smiled. Maybe she was too vacuous to realize that he had touched her child inappropriately. That day, Munachi asked to return to her father and then gave her mother an extensive birth. In September, following an unjust physical punishment, Munachi departed from her father's residence to reside with her aunt, who was her father's sister, in close proximity to his house. On December 31st, Munachi sat, longing for someone to notice her and make her feel loved, not invisible. She reflected on the Bible's Beatitudes. "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Munachi's father arrived, but neither inquired about her well-being nor extended any support. He did not invite her to return home but instructed her to visit his residence the following day, New Year's Day, to greet his spouse and child. If Munachi committed such an act, it would give her father's new family leverage to provoke her. Indignant and driven by her father's indifference, she defied his command, expressing her feelings and accusing him of mistreating her due to his new family. His wife subjected her to psychological abuse and attempted to starve her. However, he remained silent regarding her mistreatment. He physically abused her due to the influence of his wife and daughter. He never listened to her explanations or considered the difficulties she encountered, as she was considered insignificant to him. They frustrated her until she left her grandmother's house, where they had been living. As far as she was concerned, The woman was his wife, but Munachi had nothing to do with his chosen family. Her father was angered by her assertive response and struck her with such force that she collapsed and lost consciousness. She awakened in a hospital, confused about her surroundings, with her arms crossed, listening to her heartbeat. The last memory she retained was an argument with her father. She was agitated during their conversation, and he appeared scandalized by her brashness. She remembered seeing him raise his hand. She found herself in that room presently. She was uncertain as to how she had arrived there. Turning her head, her eyes met her father's, who was seated silently on a chair next to the bed she was occupying. Meaning, in a fit of rage, he could have killed her by breaking her neck if she had fallen on a blunt object. His implicit actions contributed to a deeper and more nuanced understanding of their fragile relationship. He chose his new family over her. She accepted that, but now he wanted to annihilate her. Therefore, future interactions between Munachi and her father would be different or non-existent. Munachi sought solace with her aunt, believing it would be better than her father's. However, her aunt's abuse was different. Munachi was compelled to serve as an unpaid errand girl. Often, her aunt sent her and a cousin trekking for many miles to handle her business, never gave them fare. Her children, she had never sent either of them with her or her cousin. However, she and her cousin would never complain. Would never. Countless times, overwhelmed with emotions, she got into physical fights with children because she didn't express her true feelings. Munachi's internal distress manifested through extreme anger, physical aggression, such as slapping, and transforming her peers into mere objects. When her father became aware of these actions, he would impose punishments on her. Although the issue recurred, he did not perceive her conduct as justifying concern. Instead of engaging in dialogue to comprehend the underlying causes, he persisted in administering punishments. She consistently experienced anguish, disappointment, and depression due to her father's neglect and including her in the family. He perceived her as a nuisance to be discarded. On occasions, she harbored thoughts of death similar to her siblings. She made 2 suicide attempts and endured suffering, though the outcomes did not materialize. Her life was a mess after her grandmother's death and a disaster after her sister passed away. Munachi didn't feel alone, but she was alone. Munachi's mother rebuilt her life and had another child, not to mention a second. She didn't feel like a part of her mother's family because of her husband, partner. Her father's wife and her child were his family. Munachi wasn't involved in either parent's life. She saw everyone but didn't feel connected to anyone. She belonged to no one, yet she longed for someone to notice her. She couldn't express her feelings to anyone in the family. As a child, they would shush or knock her down if she started expressing her sentiments. Munachi developed romantic feelings for Liam at 14, following the death of her sister, under the impression that this might help ease her grief and fill the void. However, he liked to pursue multiple romantic interests. That experience was particularly devastating because her heart and mind were deeply invested in the relationship. It profoundly affected her morale and led her to distrust others more. She encountered a 23-year-old man who was neither her peer nor significantly older. She wished to engage him in conversation, believing he might help her understand life and gain a broader perspective. He impregnated her. Instead, she was not yet 15 years old. She was exceedingly naive and trusting, finding the pregnancy perplexing. Upon learning of her pregnancy, her father regarded her with disdain, disregarding her feelings, and stated, with an angry expression, that he wished Munachi had died instead of Amanda. She gradually descended to the corner of the room, embraced her head as if shielding her hearing from his verbal assault, moved her body, and twisted in pain caused by his exclamation and the realization that he detested her to such an extent that he wished her death. Due to his nonchalance, he would never comprehend the severity of the pain and trauma his cruelty and harsh words had inflicted upon her. Hearing his venomous language was profoundly shocking and devastating to her already delicate state. He condemned her spirit to a life of imprisonment within a dark maze of poison ivy, lasting until her final breath. Following her grandmother's passing, she found herself in solitude, with her father attending only in the evenings. Consequently, Munachi exhibited the innocence and naivety typical of a girl aged 9 or 10. She lacked friends or any individual to guide her. Her sole source of emotional support was her father, yet he left her delicate mind in utter disarray. While these words might have seemed harmless to some children her age or even younger, Munachi lacked emotional resilience. The words were harmful and distressing. His statements lingered in her subconscious, causing her distress. She harbored self-reproach for her incapacity to silence the reverberation of her father's voice. She remained confined within that metaphorical prison, devoid of any expectation of rescue or forgiveness. How could a compassionate man become so malevolent? Munachi recalled her 9th birthday, during which her father presented her with a Bible and instructed her to read it daily. On numerous occasions, he lifted her onto his shoulders, ran, and frolicked around while she extended her small arms as if in flight. Why did he become so unkind to her? She had endured the physical abuse, however, this time, when he expressed his desire for her, death, all the love, affection, and cherished memories they shared over the years appeared insignificant. The tension was so intense that Munachi occupied a corner of the room, embracing her legs, with her head positioned between them. Her mind was inundated with thoughts. The harsh truth regarding her father's treatment rendered her body and mind immobile. She wished she could lose consciousness and awaken with amnesia to escape the dreadful memories. He looked at her and departed without adding another word. Her father distanced himself from her, expelled her from his life, and replaced her with his new family. He harbored hostility towards her and desired her demise. Perhaps he hadn't considered the impact of his actions and the consequences of his statements towards her, or maybe he was demonstrating her tough love, but it wasn't how she felt. Why didn't he inadvertently kill her when he knocked her down? It would have been perfect. There would be no more unanswered questions, no more excuses for him, no more tears, no more stress, no more pain, no more depression and anxiety, no more pregnancy, nothing more to worry over. She would be at peace. Her heart ceased to love him, and she could not feign indifference. Now her mind was in torment. She was too straightforward to conceal the truth from her father, aside from expressing her love or hatred towards him. He caused her lasting harm by tripping and injuring her, yet, he was her biological father. Nevertheless, she was not born with deceit or ambiguity, nor did she wish to be. The truth was the truth, and it was divine, she always said, otherwise, it would be pernicious. Nevertheless, she would prefer to avoid forthrightness, as it brought her considerable suffering. The situation could have been different had he demonstrated even the slightest interest in her life. She would not have experienced alienation, pain, and a longing for attention. For some time, she had been an empty sailboat, propelled by the wind of life, carrying her wherever it desired. She always thought that death was inevitable because that was her father's wish. It was as if it were a command. It was as if a rapid tsunami were about to overtake her. His wish had disheartened her, causing her to surrender to the will of life. Let the wind take her wherever it may, let it create a boundless disconnect with him, let the boat capsize with her, and let her perish underneath its weight. Her mind would be at peace. She despised her father's harrowing words and was continually haunted by them. Numerous nights, she awoke in a state of distress and screamed. It was imperative that this situation cease. The French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre asserted, "We are our choices." What about Munachi? Did she possess choices? Due to her father's sudden and extreme abhorrence of her, he was responsible for whatever she became in her journey through this miserable life. Where would she begin if she attempted to modify the tapestry of her life? Would she exacerbate matters? She was now basking in self-pity with a growing human being in her womb. She shed no tears, but held her head while vacillating. Another sister of Munachi's father from a nearby town extended an invitation to Munachi to reside with her prior to her childbirth. She relocated there, in anticipation of a fresh start. Eventually she became comfortable because the aunt was very loving and caring. She didn't say she loved her, but demonstrated it. That created a good impact in Munachi's life, until a friend told her aunt to leave total care of the child to Munachi, so she would know how costly it was to care alone for a child. In that way, she would not bring another for the family to take care. Munachi listened attentively to each word but pretended ignorance of the plan. Upon hearing that statement, a tempest and an earthquake erupted within her mind, filling her with indignation. She endured distress as a consequence of that counsel. A relative arrived from abroad with limited time available to fulfill his obligations. He falsely claimed to require Munachi's assistance in delivering parcels, but instead, he drove to a secluded area and assaulted her. She remained silent, aware that her family would not believe her. Not only was she underage, but some of the predator's children were older than her. The undisclosed facts exacerbated Munachi's distress. She felt that she had no dignity to safeguard, yet, she was unable to disclose what transpired, not even to her female orphan cousin. If she told the truth, she would be called a liar, and weaponized her words to destroy her. That tormented her because she couldn't share that experience with anyone, so she substituted it for peace and bore the torment and its consequences in silence. She thought that if her parents or even one of them were in her life, that malevolent person wouldn't dare harm her. At times, some people appeared innocent and trustworthy, yet were impulsive and morally reprehensible, demonstrating a dichotomy within their character. That malevolent individual visited the residence weekly. Munachi couldn't bear to look at him and thus remained outside the house until the horn signaled departure, returning after 9 o'clock to ensure he had left. This happened once due to her naivety, but she learned from it. At this time, arrangements were made for Munachi to stay with a relative in a distant land. Although she left her child behind, however, she considered it a blessing. Upon her arrival, she was received warmly. If Munachi's story resonated with you or if you empathized with her, kindly like, share, and subscribe. By doing so, you will witness her ongoing trauma and her endeavors to overcome her journey of misery. Thank you. She felt relieved to breathe freely and comfortably, a welcome change from her previous experiences. She hoped it would be an opportunity to overcome her hardships and continue her education. The relative resided in a small town where everyone was acquainted, and information spread rapidly. Regrettably, for Munachi, it was more challenging than living with her father and subsequently with her aunts. She was placed with that family member for exploitation. On her third day of arrival, arrangements were made for her to commence work. However, the specific nature of her assigned duties was not clarified. She was dressed and prepared to depart for work, but before driving, the chauffeur requested her to sit in the rear compartment of the vehicle. He proceeded to a hotel parking lot and parked the vehicle in a corner. At approximately 9 o'clock, he requested her to wait there temporarily. However, where could she have gone? She was unaware of her whereabouts and didn't know anyone. She remained seated, her gaze wandering around. The parking lot where the vehicle was parked contained only a few conspicuous cars. Meanwhile, she considered whether she could perform the tasks, given her lack of work experience or training. Several minutes later, the driver returned, accompanied by a middle-aged man. He entered the car, where she was seated. The person who had brought her left her with the stranger. Munachi was a scared minor who had a child. She was trembling with fear because she didn't know the older man. He touched her, tears streamed as she sobbed uncontrollably, unable to communicate with the stranger, who looked much older than her father. He flattened the car seats and invaded her person more aggressively. He was the most repulsive individual she had ever encountered. His eyes appeared red, his mouth exuded the odor of stale alcohol and strong tobacco, his breath was deteriorating rapidly, as was her disdain. She was overwhelmed by the foul odor emanating from his mouth and endeavored to distance herself from him. Her emotions overwhelmed her, she cried out, yet there was no one present in the parking lot to hear her pleas. Intoxicated, he incoherently uttered phrases such as, "Timid, relax." After completing his actions, He adjusted his clothing and departed, leaving her in the vehicle, in shock and in tears. Feeling disgusted and ashamed, she exited the car to vomit. A few minutes later, the driver returned while she was crying. He did not speak to her or glance at her but then drove away. Munachi wept until she arrived at the relative's residence and expressed her desire to return home. They gazed at her, rolled their eyes, and inquired, with a hint of sarcasm, what was the princess's expectation upon her arrival. Why did she think she was here? To sit and be pretty? They added, she, referring to Munachi in the third person, gave her body and had a child. So, why not get compensated for the services provided? And if she went back, whose house would she return to? Munachi evaded the grasp of the family member's husband and became pregnant as a result, but the fact remained unknown to others. Now Munachi was 8 weeks pregnant and had been subjected to sex trafficking by her. If Munachi's narrative resonated with you and if you empathized with her suffering, kindly like, share, and subscribe. You will receive part 2 of Munachi's narrative.